The Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. We got Bryan Cameron on with us from Philly Sports Network. Where'd you get that cool setup? Where are you at right now?
I can't tell you where I'm at. I'm at an undisclosed location at the moment.
Damn, super secret location. I love it. Outstanding.
That looks like a green screen depiction of one of the Eagles' offices.
Yeah, I downloaded it from Google at one point, and it just stuck ever since.
Yeah,
Very
it's
nice.
nice though.
I've
Yeah.
never seen that
I
before.
do that on
Okay.
Zoom. I got a Lincoln Financial Field on Zoom.
There we go.
Yeah.
It looks like you're ready for a high-level meeting on discussing the Eagles' upcoming draft 20 days from now, which we're going to ask you about in a second. But I want to start here, Bryan, because we've been debating it since it went down last Friday, the Reddick trade. Howie Roseman is trying to thread a very thin needle by not only making the Eagles better in 2024, because guess what? 2023 wasn't good enough, but also with an eye on the future and making sure the Eagles stay competitive in 25, 26, 27. He's really trying to thread that needle with the Reddick trade. He going to pull it off? Is he going to be able to do what he wants to do, a little bit of both? Or has he overstepped his boundaries by subtracting a key piece from the 2024 Eagles?
It's a very, very risky move, in my opinion. One that could be very rewarding because you give more playing time to Nolan Smith. Bryce Huff becomes your immediate starter, right? But it's risky because Bryce Huff was in a part-time role with the Jets. Nolan Smith, we haven't really seen much of because that injury I feel like kind of limited him last year. Josh Sweat, we know who he is, but he played a surplus amount of snaps last season, which really took a toll on his body. It's risky unless you have a huge backup plan that we're all kind of expecting in the draft. It's a very risky move. Hassan Reddick was very productive in his time with Philly. Key piece as to why we went to the Super Bowl. This season, you had to have guys step up, and like I said, it's a very risky move because it's a new defensive scheme. We don't know what Vic Fangio really truly wants to do with the defensive line. We don't know, with the rumors out there, whether he wants, Hassan was unhappy with his role, whatever case may be. It's a very risky move. It's hard to say that the Eagles are true contenders without a fierce defensive line, and I feel like Hassan Reddick was the best defender that they had.
It's interesting because Mike Sando, buddy of mine who works for The Athletic, covered the Seahawks for a long time, very plugged in, does these, talking to executive stories each year. And he did his off-season one yesterday, I believe. And here was the quote he got about the Eagles from an executive from outside Philadelphia. And I want to read it to you guys. I just don't know who they are. I think they lost their identity and lost their confidence. Teams say they want to build from the inside out, but you lost your two stable inside players in Kelsey and Cox. Not only that, but those two guys were the culture guys. You lose those guys in a year when the head coach already has his back against the wall. I don't see it ending well. So I took that quote and I texted an executive I talked to, and this is what he gave me back. I understand that sentiment. They are shipping out Reddick and bringing in Barkley. That's not business as usual for the Eagles. No matter how you spin it, it seems reactionary. And I said, for the first time in a very long time, people in the NFL are looking at the Eagles and saying, what's going on? You usually set your watch by this organization. Now, people outside that conference room of yours, Bryan, are starting to go, what the heck are the Eagles doing? You think that's fair or unfair?
I think that's very fair, honestly, because as much of as a fan I am of the Barkley move, I feel like that was to me a good offensive move, right? It was very unorthodox. It brought the PTSD of the DeMarco Murray, Sam Bradford days where we don't know what the hell was going on. It's a very fair outlook on it, but if we've learned anything from Philadelphia over the past decade or so, if we learned anything from Howie ever since he stepped out of the closet from the Chip Kelly days, they're always forward thinking. They're thinking ahead of the times. They're trying to be ahead of everything that's coming towards the NFL. And I feel like the Barkley move possibly was one of those moves. I feel like, no matter what, Reddick wasn't going to stay here. If Reddick didn't want to budge for below 20 mil a year, and the Eagles didn't want to pay him for over 20 mil a year, I get it. It's a business at the end of the day. But maybe they're ahead of the curve with the thinking of Bryce Huff and they're thinking of Nolan Smith. They've always had a good defensive line when they have great rotational pieces, in my opinion. And I feel like that's why I feel like coming into the draft, like there has to be a trick up Howie's sleeve at the moment that nobody's aware of. It's very unorthodox how they approach the offseason, but I still feel like they're doing it in a way where they're ahead of the game as opposed to behind everybody else.
No, we'll see over time. And I would have defended the Eagles up until the Reddick move. I liked the Barkley move. The Huff move was surprising to me, and it became a domino effect with the fact that it affected Reddick. So, and I think less of the Huff move, or there's more pressure on Huff to be as good as the Eagles think he's going to be, and we'll see if that's the case. The CJGJ move, I like the fact that they were willing to roll the dice and bring a high maintenance player back. They needed talent, and the talent I think will come with CJGJ. So I would have defended them, even if the rest of the NFL looks at them as going outside their usual modus operandi. That's okay. If you see need for a change, make a change. But you got to get the moves right. You got to get the evaluation right. I'm not sure they did with the Reddick trade. It'll tell over time. We haven't had you on since CJGJ re-signed. I sing the praises of the Eagles on that one for getting the talent back in the lineup that they needed. The mistake was probably letting CJGJ walk out the door rather than bringing him back at this time. Are the Eagles good to go at safety? CJGJ at one, the extended Lance Blankenship at the other. Is that good enough at the safety position for the Birds starting the season?
No. I believe bringing CJ back was a hell of a move. Standing ovation for that move because you brought swagger back into the secondary and you brought back a little bit of smash mouth football, which the Eagles were missing. They were missing the pride in that defense last season. But it's just a piece of the puzzle. It's not the final piece of the puzzle. I feel like they need a veteran back there. You have Sidney Brown, who tore his ACL last season. We don't know when he's coming back this season. Reed Blankenship, has his moments where he's healthy, has his moments where he's very unhealthy. But I feel like with CJ being back, you have a Swiss Army knife that you're going to probably see a lot in nickel. You're going to see him move around a lot all over the field. So bringing in a veteran that can actually be stabilizing behind him or be in a rotational piece, I think is key. Bringing in a guy who, Eagles fans have been flirting with for the longest, Justin Simmons, makes all the sense in the world to me. Does it happen? Not too sure, but I feel like there's still that secondary is still very much as big of a question mark as a defensive line at the moment.
Do you think that's thanks for letting me jump in, John. Do you think the fact that Justin Simmons isn't an Eagle yet is price related? That Simmons is still clinging to a price that the Eagles won't match? You just told us you think that's why Hassan Reddick is gone. He wanted a price. The Eagles weren't getting there. Hassan, sorry, we got to trade you. Do you think that's why Simmons isn't an Eagle yet? Because his asking price is still too high for their liking.
I'm curious about that because on one side, you think it's the price point. On the other side, you question if the relationship with Vic Fangio and him was actually as good as we hope it was. I think there's been rumors out there from a lot of Broncos people that said that, Fangio and Simmons just weren't a great match together. So it could be either or. If it's a price point, this is a guy that you could probably get after the draft. Not a guarantee if he doesn't sign beforehand. But it's a hell of a move in my opinion if you get a guy like that because he's versatile. He's a veteran at that. The Eagles made a hell of a move in signing a veteran in Rodney McLeod a couple of years ago, and that worked out for them very well. This could be the same type of situation, especially with somebody you're bringing in to kind of groom a Sidney Brown who we know has all the talent in the world.
We've heard that quite a lot, Bryan, when you hear about players in Vic. Is there any concern? Like, I don't think anybody is going to debate whether Vic Fangio can coach defense or teach defense, but we keep hearing about players who don't necessarily like the style. And sometimes there's just a generational clash. And, Vic's an old school guy and it's a new environment. And any concern in that, the fact that I forget who we had on, Jody. You might remember they were talking about Jalen Ramsey and how successful he was when he was healthy with Vic Fangio last year, but he couldn't stand him. And you're bringing up Justin Simmons, and people say how successful he was with Vic Fangio, but maybe he can't stand him. Is that a concern at all?
I would be concerned if this was an older group. This is a very young group, I feel like, on the defense, and I feel like they kind of need this little bit of a old school approach. I mean, I come from the days where you get coached hard, you produce better at the end of the day. That's how I feel about it. You get paid to do this, you get paid to listen to your coaches, do what you got to do, and just get better at it. But I feel like with a Jalen Carter, with a Jordan Davis, Josh Sweat, Nolan Smith, even a Bryce Huff, like you have guys who are young enough to you can still mold. Even Devin White, I feel like as well. Like you can mold these guys into being better versions of themselves with Carter coaching. I mean, their quarterback, I think, is going to be a huge example of this. Who loves to be coached hard, and him leading by example, I feel like would kind of make it easier for players to buy into the Vic Fangio stuff.
And the reason why I'm not going to just accept, Fangio's old and the young guys can't relate. Steve Spagnuolo's a year younger than Vic Fangio. And look at what he's done with the Kansas City Chiefs the last couple of years. Completely turned that defense over and basically got him a second Super Bowl title. This one not being won directly by Patrick Mahomes, being won more by the Chiefs defense. So if Spags can coach up all these young corners that they drafted,
well, it's not just age. Spags has a different personality than Vic. I mean, it's not just age. I said sometimes there's a generational disconnect. Andy Reid is, he's done a great job staying ahead of the times as an innovator. It's not a death sentence that as you get older, you can't evolve and connect with younger people. But sometimes it is a problem for some people. And I'm saying as these stories continue to pop up, was there any concern? Because it can work the other way as well. It's not a death sentence, but unless we keep hearing these things in Miami and Denver, and I don't know, it's got to.
I don't know. Hey, winning cures everything at the end of the day. I mean,
well, that's true too.
If they're winning, I feel like these young guys will really buy into it and kind of bring the youth out of Vic Fangio, if anything.
The most outspoken guy who's been anti-Fangio is Jalen Ramsey, and guess what? He's got problems with everybody. He's one of those high-maintenance guys. So I'm not going to hang that on. He couldn't get along with the
Jalen
Fangio.
Jalen Ramsey is, even though he was so successful last year when he was healthy, he wants to play press. That's what he is. That's what great corners. He's the best corner of his generation. He wants to play press, and you had Fletcher Cox in the shift from Jim Schwartz to Jonathan Gannon. Did not like it a little bit, going from that scheme, Jim's scheme, to the current scheme, which is Vic's obviously fueled scheme. But, Fletcher and winning helps, as Bryan points out. They started to win games, and it was like, all right, it's working. I can't be a you-know-what, but some guys are going to be a you-know-what if they can't play what they want to play. Just something to throw out there.
Yeah, I'm not scared, at least not the start of the season. I want to see it with my own two eyes that it's a problem and have guys rightfully on the record going, what the hell are we doing here? I still think it was a very good hire. We'll find out over time. All right. Do want to get your take on the Eagles draft because we're getting that much closer. We're now 3 weeks away. Zangaro had a good piece up on NBC Sports Philly looking at the 13 number one draft picks that Howie has had in his tenure as general manager sans the Chip Kelly year, and the breakdown of each particular position. And it screams, we go to the trenches. When in doubt, we go to the trenches. Defensive end, defensive tackle, offensive line. He varies from that very infrequently, including the last 3 number one draft picks on the defensive line the Eagles have used. I'm a cornerback guy. They have taken exactly 0 cornerbacks in the first round during Howie Roseman's tenure of the draft, first round of the draft. But I see it as a position of need, and I see it as a position of strength in this particular draft. Is Howie going to go away from his usual modus operandi and take a cornerback in the first round, Bryan?
I want to say yes, but I'm getting ripped on Twitter right now for my mock draft of taking Nate Wiggins. So
good for you. I'm with you. I didn't rip you. I can guarantee you that. I'd love to see Nate Wiggins here.
You always get ripped on Twitter, no matter who you
always,
put up
yeah,
there.
no
You
matter
get
what. I
ripped.
You got
mean,
a good point there,
Yeah.
John.
if I grow my hair, they'll rip me for that as well.
No.
It's weird because we talked about this last night on Flipping the Birds. Cornerback is to us is a position of need, right? Because you have aging guys like Darius Slay and James Bradbury, and you have the Bradbury contract. But they also did pick up Isaiah Rodgers last offseason, who hasn't been reinstated yet, but the expectation is that he will. You do have Keely Ringo. You have a guy like Eli Ricks, Josh Jobe. They have a lot of young talent. So it's kind of one of those things like, if you do draft a corner, like where are you moving Bradbury and who's taking on that contract? I'm all for them drafting a corner because I feel like this is a very talented class. I love Wiggins. I love Mitchell. I love Arnold as well. But if we're following Howie's trend, then ideally we're thinking about the trenches. You're thinking about, there's going to be a run on offensive linemen within the first I would say 15 picks or so. If the Eagles trade up, then it's most likely for one of those guys. But if you think about defensive end, you have guys that could fall to you at 22. You have Latu. You have Chad Robinson, who I feel like is raw, but is a freak of nature. And would be, a great replacement in the future for Hassan Reddick. It's just one of those things where it's like, it feels like it's going to be one of those drafts where we get a little disappointed in the first round, but it makes sense. It just doesn't make sense to what we want. If they do stick to the tendencies, I think they go offensive line. I'm hoping that they go cornerback or defensive end. I would, like I said, I would love Chad Robinson. I would love Nate Wiggins. I think it makes sense to finally get a shutdown corner in Philadelphia when instead of buying somebody else's shutdown corner that's aged past 29 years old. It's about time we start getting homegrown guys at cornerback. You get a guy that could link up with Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks in the future, and you're set. You also save money as well.
Yeah, we had Matt Manicherian on yesterday, former NFL scout, and what was the number he gave us, Jody? 10, I believe. He would not be
There's an
surprised.
outside shot, 10 offensive linemen.
10 offensive linemen are worthy to go in the first round.
No, that's not what he said. He said he thinks 10 can go.
10 may go.
Worthy and
worthy,
actual pick are
you're
two
right.
different things.
He thinks 10 may go. But the point is, if he thinks 10 may go, it's pretty deep at the top of the draft when it comes to the offensive line. And he kind of mentioned that's what the Eagles do. So when that's what you do, and it's that deep at the top of the draft, if you're a betting man, yeah, I'm going to go. Odds are you're going to get value, and evaluation is going to match up with offensive line. Mm-hmm. Now, the outlier, and you bring up Dave's piece when you look at former first-round picks, and I get it, but I say so many times, the Eagles wanted to draft J.C. Horn. They wanted to draft Patrick Surtain. They didn't get to him. They didn't get him. Mm-hmm. They didn't, they wanted to draft Christian McCaffrey. You didn't get to them. So there's two positions where we went, well, they haven't taken a quarterback since, what is it, Lido? They haven't taken a corner since, they haven't taken a running back since, they haven't taken an off-ball linebacker, which they won't take an off-ball. That one we can still stand on. But in the past, they've wanted to take corners. They've wanted even to take a running back. But there's other teams involved. So if you want, the Eagles may want Quinyon Mitchell. That's the guy I focused on. If there's going to be a targeted trade up for Howie Roseman, as he's done recently, many years, he did it with Devontae, he did it with Jordan Davis, he did it with Jalen Carter, but very small moves up. And if he starts to fall a little bit, I could see them trying to go get him. But if they have to stay at 22, yeah, if I'm playing the odds, got to be offensive line. Almost has to be, just because of the depth of this particular draft.
Yeah,
doesn't
and then you
mean
need
they
somebody
don't want something else, though. Yeah,
you're gonna need somebody for the future to replace Lane Johnson. I feel like that's what that seems to be the recipe for this draft somehow, some way.
Yeah, and all the top 30 visits. So many offensive linemen. Yeah. They're doing a nice. I'll tell you what.
Of those top 30 visits they have offensive linemen, how many are actually potentially going to be taken in the first round?
Well, they brought Guyton in.
Did they bring Rosengarten in?
I do not.
He's
believe
not a first round pick.
No, but he'll be like a second round if I'm mistaken.
Right. They brought in a bunch of interior guys, and they wouldn't be first rounders.
Which is telling me that they're looking at it as the possibility of will be taking offensive linemen, just not in the first round.
Well, they're definitely taking an offensive lineman in those first 3 picks. I'm 100%. I'd like to go 99.9. I'm 100% that one of those first 3 picks is offensive line. Yeah, it could get pushed down because it could work both ways. Matt also brought that up. It's so deep, maybe you feel comfortable waiting a little bit. And if you do want a cornerback, you got to act right away. Because there's not as many.
That's the way I've been looking at it all year, Johnny Mac.
But my thing is, I think there's a big drop off, and other people disagree. I think there's a big drop off after Arnold and the kid from Tulane, Quinyon Mitchell. I think there's a big drop off, and I'm not comfortable with any of the other guys at 22. If you trade down. McKinstry, I would, but he's hurt. So I'm not comfortable. And if you move down to the bottom of the first round, you get something else. I could see that. I could see then I'll take those guys.
How do you feel about Wiggins?
Bryan's got the guy. Wiggins is certainly worthy of the 22nd pick in the draft.
Yeah,
he's the closest thing in this draft to Sauce Gardner. Size, traits.
You're higher on him than me. And a lot of Eagles fans seem to be settling in on Cooper DeJean. My problem with him is a lot of people think he's a safety. And the Eagles need a pure outside corner.
Exactly.
But a pure outside zone corner. If they're going to stick with the Fangio theme, if Fangio's going to be here for 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years, then they don't need the man-to-man coverage guy. They need a guy who can.
And that's why. And I'm probably the only one in Philadelphia guy who has no problem with James Bradbury coming back. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. I don't even want him to take a corner because that's how much I think. And I'm the only one. I know I'm on an island.
You definitely are the only one.
I guarantee he has a bounce back year, and you're never going to see it because if they draft a corner, they're going to cut him post June 1st. If they're forced to keep him and they're keeping him as a safety net, I think you're going to see, even with Mitchell, who's the player I like. It seems like Jody likes Wiggins. You like Wiggins. I don't know if you like him better than Mitchell, but I think Mitchell's the best corner. Even if they get Mitchell, you're going to have growing pains. You're going to young corner. Bradbury's going to be good in this defense, and I want to see it. And I probably am not going to see it. And
do you feel like? And just a quick question for you guys: do you feel like Bradbury's fall off last season was due to the inconsistent play of the safeties?
I think they moved him around like morons. I think they're playing him in the slot.
Much more about coaching than anything else.
Yeah,
it was the inefficiency of first.
I remember the first day was in the slot. I came on with Jody, and I'm like, "What the hell are they doing? what?"
Here's one where I'll give Sean Desai credit. He kind of knew that he had a fragile, do not be careful, glass jaw interior corner. And he said, we better have a safety net here. So they tried a little bit of everything. What they found out was trying isn't good enough. You have to have someone who can actually play there. And all the trying went right by the boards and only helped the defense.
That's my whole point
later.
Vic is going to put him on the right side and play him in as a zone corner. And he's going to have a great year if it comes to pass. And that's why I sort of want him to stay away from corner. But, they don't think about it that way. I'm not trying.
No,
Oh, I think they're absolutely thinking about it that way. And I'll tell both of you guys here, right here, right now. You know who's going to decide whether James Bradbury is on the Eagles or not? James Bradbury. They will do to James Bradbury exactly what the Giants did. On a given date, probably sometime after the draft, when they take Wiggins in the first round, as Bryan and I will be clapping on that selection.
If they take Wiggins, he's getting cut. There's no.
Oh, not immediately. He'll be called into the office and told, listen, we'd like to keep you. We'd like to give you the chance to compete. We think you fit in the Fangio defense. But here's what we need you to do with your contract. And he's got to renegotiate down. and take less money and let Howie move the money around any way he wants with future years in the contract or whatever else, under the threat of, if not, we're going to release you. And then do you want to go out on the open market on June 1st when all the teams have spent all their money and had their draft picks and going to play with their youth and try and find yourself a job? We still think our offer.
If they draft a corner in the first round, he's out. There's no negotiation. Yeah. There's no nothing. They already have Ringo and Ricks as young players. They're well stocked with developmental players. That's not the problem. They need a starter. And if they draft a kid at 22, or they go up to draft a kid like Mitchell, that person is penciled in as a starter, and he's out the door. And I don't want to see that. I'm the only one, I admit. I'm on an island, but I think Bradbury's going to have a bounce back year if they let him have a bounce back year. And I don't, if you ask me, I don't think they're going to let him have a bounce back year. So, but we'll see how it shakes out.
And you and I see it the same, except for the timing. And I absolutely believe Howie. If we've learned nothing this year, we've learned that it's kind of hard line Howie. And he did what he did with Hassan Reddick. And finances certainly played a part in that decision. I think finance will play a part in the Bradbury decision. You want to come back and play under our figure, then we'll bring you back. You want to go out and test the free agent market when we cut you after every team has already filled out their roster? Okay, fine. Good luck. The Giants did the same exact thing. Howie's going to do the same thing to Bradbury that the Giants did. And the Eagles actually betted from it, lucked into it, because they got a damn good year out of Bradbury and help them get to the Super Bowl.
And I'll go one further. I'm going to get more people pissed off. I think Ringo is every bit the prospect of any of those second-tier corners. And you already got him on the roster.
I 100% agree. And I don't mind doubling up on that. In my opinion, if you get somebody in the first round,
how many more years has Slay got? At some point, you're going to have to replace
Slay. This is it for Slay. That's a legitimate aspect, and it's never a bad thing to carpet bomb a position, so it's not. It doesn't rule it out, but it further indicates that, hey, if you think you're a Super Bowl contender, we've had this debate with Hassan Reddick. If you're all in. You don't want the young players. Nick Sirianni don't want young players on the field. We know that. You're going to be forced to throw out a young corner. I don't know.
But do you want a young corner? Or you want the 2023 version of James Bradbury back? We don't know which one we're getting, 2022 or 2023. You hope that it's 2022 because Fangio will use him better, but you don't know that.
Well, I'm very confident. Yes, all football is about evaluation. I'm very confident Vic Fangio will use him correctly and he will have a bounce-back season if given the opportunity. His game was never predicated on speed to begin with. So everybody's saying he lost the step, this and that. He never had the step. He's a zone corner. I think I'm very confident, but they're going to try to get a younger corner. He's here as a safety net.
All right. All that being said, who's going to be playing the slot corner for the Eagles this year? We all keep throwing Isaiah Rodgers' name out there. I keep looking at the Eagle roster. He's still not there. He's on the suspended list. We're all assuming he's going to get reinstated at some point. At what point do we go, wait a minute, why isn't he back on the roster yet? Is it a given he's their slot corner going into training camp, their starting guy?
I mean, from what I've read, it seems like Rodgers is actually a better outside corner. He's played in the slot, but at a very a minimum so far from what I understand. But I think the slot corner is actually going to belong. Again, it all depends on how the rest of the offseason goes. But I strongly feel like C.J. Gardner-Johnson is going to be the Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, see, you've gone there. I've suggested that, and John keeps reminding me that he said at his introductory press conference, "I'm a safety," and that the Eagles will keep him at that position.
Yeah,
I think they'll get creative with him.
They might. I don't think they'll do it consistently.
Correct.
At least he doesn't mind doing it. He already did it out of necessity. If somebody gets hurt, whether it's Tyler Hall or they signed him from Las Vegas or somebody they bring in, Matt also said it's a very deep draft when it comes to slot corners later. So they may bring in somebody else. You bring up, you're right, Bryan, in that Isaiah Rodgers played mainly outside in Indianapolis, but that's because they had Kenny Moore. I think people forget that part of the equation. And Kenny Moore is one of the best slot cornerbacks in the NFL. So from a physical standpoint, he looks like a slot corner.
Mm-hmm.
The Eagles may move him there. They may play him outside. We'll have to wait and see when he gets back and he's reinstated. But I do think people are closing the book too much on him in the slot because he didn't play the slot in Indianapolis, not realizing, well, they had a pretty good slot corner and they wanted him on the field, and
They made
you
it
got to
happen.
go. Yeah, you got to go play outside. So they have options. And I think CJ would do it as he did it before out of necessity, but I don't think if you go into with a plan, oh, you're going to play slot on third downs, I don't think he'd be happy with that. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think they'll get creative with him, especially if they get another safety. But again, like you mentioned, like they could also get creative with their developmental guys, like who's played the slot last season. Were they terrific? Not in the sense, but hey, like a year under your belt, you learn a lot. But I feel like Fangio is gonna have his pickings, for a lack of a better term.
All right, let me run this one by you. We brought this up on the show yesterday, the day before. I don't remember which one. Via our pal Mike Tannenbaum, who ran down a mock draft and had the Eagles taking at 22. Brock Bowers, tight end, University.
Sign me up. Sign me up.
There's a couple of reasons why you have to at least consider it. Number one is he's from Georgia, and the Eagles automatically take players from Georgia given the chance. Number two, I think he might be the third or fourth most talented player in the draft, and you're getting him at 22. And number three, let me note this for those of you who are defending Howie Roseman's trade of Josh Reddick. They moved on from Reddick because he's 29, and he may be a declining player. You know who else is 29? Dallas Goedert. And the Eagles drafted Goddard when Zach Ertz was younger than Goddard is now. So if you're going to draft a replacement for a guy, why not draft the best one on the whole lot of the draft and one of the best players? People mock the fact that Tannenbaum mocked.
Well, I mocked him. I mocked him too, but I mocked him because Brock's not going to be there.
You don't think he's going to be at 22? Nor do I. But we're talking hypothetically there here. If he's there at 22 and you're the Eagles, can you possibly pass on him, Bryan Cameron?
My thing with tight ends right now in Nick Sirianni's day and age, it just doesn't feel like he values them as he should. So you got the question, like, is Kellen Moore gonna have full say of the offense where he's gonna actually use a guy like Bowers? I don't mind it, but at the same time, it's kind of one of those things like, is he the best need available? But me saying best need available doesn't actually correlate with what the Eagles think of best player available. If he's the best player available, then by all means, it's a hell of an offensive weapon you're adding to this offense. But if he's not the best need available, then it's kind of one of those things where you gotta just bite your tongue and go another year with Dallas Goedert. I mean, I feel like we still haven't really touched on. It's either Goddard's ceiling is not that high, or we haven't crossed that bridge yet.
Well, Dallas was one of the part that Jody didn't bring up was injuries, and he's got a style where he's susceptible to injury. He's a very physical player. He won Kyle Brandt's Angry Run twice last year, whatever that award is, and one of them he got hurt on because he runs so angry and he's breaking his forearm on people. So he's susceptible to injury, so that factors in as well. I mean, Brock Bowers is just, the Eagles don't need a tight end. I'm not saying that. Well, they do need a backup tight end, but he's so good. Yeah, if he's a 22, and I love Mike, I'm not ripping him. I'm saying if he falls to 22 and there's that many dumb teams in this league, I'm going to run up and take him. But
Brock Bowers would play, if the Eagles took Brock Bowers would play more than the backup break glass selection of a right tackle in the draft in the first round, if that's the direction.
Yeah, and by the way,
he's just going to sit there and learn from Lane Johnson. So why can't you have Brock Bowers as a part-time tight end?
And by the way, Kellen Moore, if you're such a great offensive coordinator, sit Paris Campbell down, screw 11 personnel, and play 12 with Dallas and Brock. Bing.
That's been the Philadelphia
Problem
dream for the
solved.
longest.
Yeah.
12 personnel is what we strive for over here.
Yeah.
That's true. Getting both of them out there blocking for Saquon Barkley will make Eagle fans very happy. All right, Bryan, what can we look for coming up on Philly Sports Network from you leading up to the draft?
So we're getting a lot of mock drafts out. I know my first one wasn't to the liking of a lot of people.
You got yelled at, Andrew.
I got
You're
yelled
gonna
at.
get yelled at. No matter what you do, you can do 50 of them. You're going to get yelled at every time. Don't
Yeah, I
worry
got yelled
about
at by coworkers and Twitter members alike. But yeah, I mean, we're working on a mock drafts. We'll have our regular PSN draft event as well, which is a 3-day event where a lot of us host the show from
Nice.
Thursday all the way to the end of the draft. You can actually catch us as well on Flipping the Birds every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. where we're actually going through each position for prospects, the best prospects that are available for the Eagles. And yeah, I mean, just definitely tune into PSN. We have a lot of good things coming in down the pipeline.
Stick to your Wiggins guns. You got a chance to be right on that one, big guy.
It feels like Devontae Smith all over again. And people are saying he's too lean, he's too small, but it could work.
Yeah, those
skinny legs.
spindly legs, just fine working for Devontae Smith. Exactly right. Bryan, good stuff, brother. We'll get you back on in a couple of weeks after the draft. Do a little draft review with us. Thanks for jumping in today.
Sounds great. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
Thanks,
Catch
Bryan.
him on phillysportsnetwork.com. Bryan Cameron here with us on Birds 365. All right, got a timeout coming. Second hour, Brad Spielberger, who, unbeknownst to me, when I reached out and asked him if he'd come on with us, he didn't. He just said, "Yeah, sure." He didn't mention that he's switching gigs. We got a lot to talk about with Brad Spielberger.
Going to the dark side, depending. Maybe it's the good side.
Some people would say dark side. Some people would say the right side. We'll let Brad explain it. Let him explain that when he joins us. Coming up in about 20 minutes here on Birds 365. All right, Eagle fans, how would you like to save some money? I got a plan for you. I'm as good an offensive coordinator as Kellen Moore. I'll help you out. Birds fans, here's your chance to save up to 40% on your car insurance right now for one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call one of the two managing general partners, either Jim or Fran, and tell them you're a friend of both JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
My name is Fran Salerno, and I'm a managing director here at Del Valle Insurance Group. Been in the business for over 36 years, saving people money on their insurance needs. Give us a call. Let us help you custom design an insurance plan that meets both your needs and budget.